What is up, male and females? Now, I have kind of started rewatching recently again a show that I watched when I was younger called Forensic Files. And if you don't know what the show is, it was basically a true crime show where a host would narrate a crime that has happened and interview police, witnesses, investigation people, legal experts, even about a crime scene that has happened, either way in the past or something that was even modern today. And what's kind of cool is they would have actors who would recreate the crime scenes. And basically, this show really started my addiction for being a part of the true crime community. And when I say that out loud, it sounds a little weird, like the true crime community. And listen, crime is nothing to necessarily celebrate and be like, yo, this is awesome. Because at the end of the day, innocent people get hurt when there is crime all the time. It's not something that we should necessarily be glorifying as much as most people have, but it is important to learn about it. And it's important to learn patterns to better protect yourself. And I would say without watching stuff like Forensic Files or listening to some podcasts, I'll be a pretty ignorant person when it comes to how messed up the world can actually be. And we always should go to the effort to better protect ourselves and our loved ones by learning these patterns and at least staying like up to date and like what's happening. Now, currently, I don't watch much Forensic Files these days, mostly because I basically have seen every episode. But I have started watching this podcast called Murder of My Husband about a couple years ago. And the show itself is just a lot of fun. It basically stars a husband and wife. Peyton, the wife, who basically reads true crime stories to her husband, who her husband has no idea about any of these stories. He may have like a vague memory if it's something pretty big, but for the most part, he's never heard these stories. So you get a lot of fun back and forth. But they recently covered this story where basically it was a dark web story where a woman was killed and the FBI believed it was a hit. But the spoiler alert, and I recommend you watch that episode, and then come back, is that there was no dark web hit. The person who killed her was her husband, and what has happened was the husband was wanting to be basically a snoozer and go around and sleep with people that wasn't his wife. But the church, obviously, it's not right to do. So he went on the dark web, found a hitman service, paid a couple $1,000s, I believe, and the hit never happened. So he just killed her herself. And it was found out that this hit website was an absolute scam used to take people's money. And it's one of those things where it's like, well, obviously scamming people out of their money isn't good, but definitely people who hire to kill someone are pretty horrible people, and so I don't have sympathy for anyone that they ripped off. Now, the police have definitely arrested some people who hosted that website, and that's a whole other argument if they were in the right to scam people out of their money or not. But at the end of the day, crimes were committed, and it was a pretty bad situation. Now, for those who don't know what the dark web is, or the deep web, or those words can be used kind of intermediately, but what is the deep web? Let's start with this. Now, there's often a lot of miscommunication, and it's surrounded by like myths and exaggerated horror stories about the deep web, and it's essentially become the internet's own boogeyman. But here's actually what it is. Basically, the deep web consists of things you can't just normally get to on the normal internet. Like I can type in Google, Gmail, Facebook, whatever, but I can't index like getting access to my individual email account because I mean, obviously I have access to my email, but like I can't access that without the proper permissions. Just like I can't go to a corporate website and just get into their stuff without the proper permissions. That's technically a deep web. It's something that just can't be indexed normally by the internet. You just can't access without either special authorization or special software. Now, the deep web, as it's understood by the software called Tor, works under this. So imagine I have a letter and I have somebody I want to get that letter to, but I don't want them to know it came from me. What would I do? So I take this letter and I address it to somebody. And in the letter, along with the other thing I wanted to send, I just say, hey, send this to whoever and keep it going. And eventually you needed to reach this person. So that person reads the instructions and they take the envelope and that I have that has no return address, so it's not linked back to me. And they put another envelope, send it to someone random with no return address, with the instructions to send it to someone random. And then it just keeps going and going. It gets more and more envelopes, and there's no return address. And it finally gets to the person who was meant to receive it all along. Now, the person theoretically could go like make a trail and figure out who sent it. By the time they get there, I could have moved out. I could not be there anymore. And so that's essentially how the Tor browser works. They call it onion routing. So basically, every time you go to a different connection, it adds a layer of encryption before it sends you to another connection. That sends you to another connection that eventually gets to where you're supposed to be going. Now, here's the kicker. Tor was originally developed by the US government, but for a tool like this to actually work properly, they had to release it to the public. Today, many people use Tor for very valid reasons and legitimate reasons. I actually have Tor on my main computer. One, just to have it, but also they're like legitimate reasons is you get true privacy while browsing the internet. You don't have to worry necessarily about a lot of things you normally have to do with searching the internet. Now, it's not perfect. You can still make fingerprints. If a company can kind of figure out your fingerprint, they can kind of link you to other things. So it's not perfect, but it is viable. There is reasons to have it. A lot of people will use it if they're in a country where they don't have the freedom of expression or speech, and they'll use it to use that freedom. Or if they have services like YouTube that's blocked, they can use Tor to view YouTube. Or even journalists who are doing investigations, like especially investigations that have serious like consequences once published. They don't want to necessarily have it always tracked back to them, so they'll use Tor to be anonymous through their journalism. So that's the legitimate side of browsing, and I could show you actually here over on my main computer. You see here on my main computer, I actually have Tor pulled up, and I'm just on DuckDuckGo, and I can literally just go anywhere. I can type in Facebook, and it will take me to Facebook, and I don't have to worry about it necessarily coming from me. And if you are wondering what IP address it is showing for you, there's a website called just what is my IP address, and you just simply go to it, and it says currently that I'm in Dallas, Texas. Now, I'm nowhere near Dallas, Texas, so that's definitely not true. So showing you that there are legitimate reasons why someone would want to use something like Tor. It's a pretty good web browser. It's got a lot of good security features. So if you want to use that as your main browser to do everything you normally do, go for it. It's pretty good. But with all things in life, because sin exists, criminals quickly realize what Tor could provide for them. It provides anonymity. So think about that. Criminals can literally be shielded from illegal activities like drug trafficking, hacking services, hitmen for service, fake IDs, guns, like all these awful things can be right on the dark web. And for the most part, what separates the deep web from the dark web is they use what are called .onion websites, basically websites that you cannot find on the internet at all. And even if you took like something like the hidden wiki URL that ends in .onion and go to Google can't find it. But Tor can because it's using that onion relay. So criminals quickly started building websites that would allow them to basically create forms where people can buy stuff. And what happened was in the early 2010s, if you remember, this illegal website called Silk Road that was a marketplace for all things bad basically got hit in the mainline news, and it was shut down. The creator of it was arrested, and it was like a website that had over like $1 billion, if I'm correct, and I could be wrong. So I will leave the Wikipedia for this in the description. But basically, it was shut down, and it basically shined a light onto what Tor, specifically the dark web, was. Now, because how just the nature of these things work, is that immediately once Silk Road was shut down, there was Silk Road 2, and then Silk Road 3, Silk Road 4, and we're probably on Silk Road 20 at this point. I mean, for every website the government takes down that does something illegal, there's going to be like 6 more tickets placed. That's just a sad truth about the world we live in, and it's very depressing. The dark web isn't all like just straight drugs, drug trafficking, buying fake IDs, hitmen for hire, and all this stuff. Because the majority of the stuff is actually scams. Basically, people will pry on ignorance. If someone goes, "Oh, I need this hacker stuff done," they pay someone like $300 in Bitcoin, and it never happens. Where'd my Bitcoin go? And then you wonder why like people lose so much money, and then people also come up with these horror stories. Now, the majority of the horror stories you hear about the dark web, if someone clicked on a website they weren't supposed to go, and they found a red room or a chat box opened up, or weird things start happening around their house, they're almost entirely false and just stories to be told. Now, I like me a creepypasta. but they're all fake for the most part. Now there are some that are true, like the 2% that are true. Well, there's like a 97% if you do the math correctly equals to that of just not true. The dark web for me and why I actually used it when I was younger and why I would go to like .onion websites was one because of the information you can find on it. There's a lot of like really cool forums and like secret government like sites that you post and you can read a lot of classified documentation and it's just a lot of cool stuff. Now, if you're going to be doing this, despite me saying that it's not as dangerous as people make it out to be, you don't be messing with it. It's like talking to a stranger. Sometimes talking to that one stranger turned out all right. The next one could be not a good person. So just like strangers in real life, when you're using something like .onion to view the internet or the dark web of things, you don't want to just trust your host computer to it. So let me talk to you about some safety you should be taking while viewing dark web material. Now, when viewing dark web material, it is absolutely important that you never, ever use your host machine purely to view it. Now, if you're just going to be using the web or just doing some journalism, it's fine for that. But if the second you decide, I want to go visit the hidden wiki, you better do something other than your host computer because that is some dangerous stuff. Now, I'm a careful person. I am somebody who's actually never fallen for a phishing attempt. No matter how many Nigerian princes claim that they're going to make me a millionaire, I have never fell for that once. Now, not making fun of people who do, because some of them are very convincing. I've almost fallen for a couple of them. But you can never be too careful. You can never, like, there's going to be that time where I'm actually going to download something and it's going to be a virus and it's going to wreck my day. It's going to happen. So the less you have the likelihood of your personal files being harmed or like accessed by someone else, the better chance you have of just enjoying whatever you're trying to enjoy, unless you're doing drugs or anything. That's not cool. Now, what I would recommend is find a computer that is not tied to you in any shape or form outside of the fact that you own the computer. So, like, don't have any of your banking information on it. Don't have any personal files on it. Get a USB from like Walmart for like $5. Mount Tails OS on that thing, and boot from the flash drive, and you'll be fine. You can do what you need there. In fact, a lot of journalisms do that. They'll go to a public library, plug in a USB, boot up Tails OS, do their thing, and then they're gone, and no one knew any better. What I'm doing and what I don't recommend if you don't know what you're doing, I have experience in this for the most part. So I basically created a VM that is sandboxed from my host computer, meaning that while it's on my host computer, theoretically, no virus, unless it's a very sophisticated piece of virus, should be able to jump from the host machine from my virtual machine to my host computer. And another step that I took is I virtualized my network in a subnet and basically put it on there. So even if by some chance I get a virus and it can't access my host, it may try escaping through the internet, but it's confined to that subnet. So it's not going to be able to hop over to my current subnet and do damage. Theoretically, I'm not a genius when it comes to subnetting. I'm just saying this is what I have done. Make myself safe while I do this series, and that's just what I'm doing. Now, if I catch a virus and wreck my day, well, that's just gonna happen, and I'll deal with it when I deal with it. All right, so we're in my Ubuntu VM, and we're on the Tor browser, and all we're gonna simply do is just go to the hidden wiki, and we're gonna hit the hiddenwiki.com, and then we're not on the dark web yet, the dark web. We're gonna go to the oldest hidden wiki. And as you're going to see here, we're going to get a bunch of weird things here ending with a .onion. And would you look at that? We're on the dark web, boys and girls. And basically, we can start our series on the next episode picking up from here. Now, as you can see, there's a bunch of different websites. Basically, you got your editor's picks, you got your volunteers kind of links here. And then you got financial services, you got commercial services, anonymity services, darknet versions of popular sites. You got blogs, general knowledge, email messaging. Like there's a ton of sites here that can be used, not just for drugs. Like I want to mention before, and kind of want to make the series, is the dark web is just not about drugs and all this other stuff. Now I will be covering in some episodes scam websites and basically viewing what they are and how they work. So basically, this is what the dark web is. It's not that scary. I'm not worried about somebody showing up with an AK anytime soon, like how many dark web stories will try telling me that they are. So basically, that's basically what it comes to when knowing about the dark web. And I hope you found this a bit informative. And just in general, don't make dumb decisions. If you don't know what you're doing, don't mess with it. It's best to leave it alone. Leave it to the professionals, for God's sake. Anyway, that will do it, and we'll get the series up and going, and I think it'll be pretty good. So until then, remember to like and subscribe and share with your friends.